She was just 12 years old. One night, she was home in her bed, and by morning, she was gone. No sign of a struggle, no goodbye, and no one has seen her alive since. Her father said she ran away, but her teacher believed she was running from something. And nearly 2 years later, in the thick brush of a Georgia plantation, Lori Paige Wiley's body was finally found. But the person accused of putting her there would die before telling the world what really happened. And now, one question still echoes in the silence she left behind. What happened to Lori that night? Subscribe to follow the full story, because the closer we get to the truth, the darker it becomes. A 12-year-old girl disappears. No noise, no goodbye, no return. Sometimes the quietest nights hide the loudest truths. One of those nights swallowed Lori Paige Wiley. She was just 12, a middle schooler in Tallahassee. That evening, she was at home. She had school the next day. Her uniform was still laid out on her bed. By morning, she was gone. Her father, Andrew Wiley, told police she must have left on her own while he was out working overnight. He said it wasn't like her, but she'd been upset. Maybe she needed space. At 7:12 a.m., he dialed 911, said she took a bag, that maybe she'd run off. But when officers arrived, the story began to unravel. Lori's room looked untouched. No packed bag, no phone, shoes still by the door, and no one in the neighborhood saw anything. The back window was cracked open, but there was no sign of forced entry or a planned escape. To some, it looked like a runaway. To others, something was deeply wrong. Most parents scream for answers when a child goes missing. Andrew Wiley went quiet, too quiet, after reporting Lori Paige Wiley missing on the morning of June 2nd, 2023. Her father gave police a simple story. She was gone when he got home. He assumed she'd run away. He said they'd argued the night before, that she'd taken a backpack and left. It wasn't impossible, but it didn't feel right, because Lori's bedroom was still in order. Her school clothes were still folded, and there were no signs of preparation. Not the way you'd expect from a child planning to leave. But when officers asked Andrew for recent photos of his daughter, he had none. When they asked for her social media logins, he claimed he deleted them all for her protection. When the school asked him to join public search efforts, he declined. Andrew Wiley didn't hold a press conference. He didn't join vigils. He didn't stand in front of cameras and beg for Lori's safe return. Instead, he avoided media. He turned down interviews. He rarely even responded to police follow-ups, only doing the bare minimum. To some, he was grieving. To others, he was hiding. Detectives began noticing contradictions. Andrew had said he came home and found Lori gone, but his phone records showed a gap in activity for nearly 5 hours. He said she had acted out before, but school staff couldn't recall a single serious disciplinary issue. And something else was missing too. There were no baby photos of Lori in the house, no school awards, no personal mementos in the living room, not even a framed picture on the fridge. It was like someone had tried to erase her long before the world knew she was gone. In early 2024, a digital breakthrough would change everything. A single phone backup would finally expose where Andrew Wiley went that morning and what he might have been trying to hide. Somewhere between the final bell and the silence that followed, one person refused to let Lori disappear quietly. Margaret Summers wasn't just a teacher. She was Lori's favorite, the one who stayed after class, the one who asked real questions and waited for real answers. And she noticed early on that something was wrong. Lori had changed. Once bright and curious, she grew quiet. She started wearing long sleeves. Even on warm days, she flinched at loud voices. She stared too long at the floor. And whenever anyone asked about home, she hesitated. In the months before Lori vanished, Ms. Summers flagged concerns to the school counselor. She said Lori seemed afraid, said she didn't want to go home, said something fell off. But without concrete proof, nothing could be done. Lori didn't speak up. She never named anyone. And so the concerns were quietly documented and left untouched. Then Lori disappeared. And for Ms. Summers, silence was no longer an option. As the investigation stalled, it was Ms. Summers who kept Lori's name alive. She organized small vigils. She printed flyers and posted them around town. She contacted local media and pleaded for continued coverage. She even posted Lori's photo online every week, with one line, "Still missing, still loved, still waiting." Her efforts spread. Parents, teachers, church members, they all joined. For nearly 2 years, it was this grassroots movement that kept Lori's case from disappearing completely. And when the authorities ran out of answers, it was Ms. Summers who kept asking the hard questions. She never believed Lori ran away. Not once. Because Lori had told her, in 1,000 quiet ways, that something was deeply wrong at home. Her last known location wasn't on any missing persons flyer. It was buried deep inside a phone her father tried to erase. Sometimes, the truth doesn't come from what someone says. It comes from what they try to delete. For almost a year, Lori Paige Wiley's case had gone quiet. No suspects, no body, and no solid leads. Her father, Andrew Wiley, still insisted she had run away. There were no witnesses, no physical evidence. Just one thing standing in the way of the truth. A phone. Andrew's phone. In early 2024, investigators finally gained access to a cloud backup of Andrew Wiley's phone. And what they discovered changed everything. In his deleted browser history. How to hide a body in swamp water. Fastest way to decompose remains. Georgia swampland. No cameras. And even more damning, a GPS location ping, time-stamped just hours after Lori was reported missing. It led to a remote area nearly 90 minutes north, Merrily Plantation in Thomas County, Georgia. A private stretch of land surrounded by brush, trees, and silence. Andrew had never mentioned going there. He'd never explained why his phone showed movement in that direction. And when questioned again, he had no answers. Merrily Plantation is a largely abandoned patch of old farmland. No surveillance, no homes nearby, no reason a man with a missing daughter should be there, especially before sunrise. Detectives searched it briefly, but the terrain was overgrown, thick, inaccessible. Without direct evidence, they couldn't dig. But quietly behind the scenes, they started watching Andrew Wiley more closely. They knew something had happened there. They just didn't know what yet. She was hidden in a place no one was supposed to look. And for nearly 2 years, the wind, the rain, and the silence kept her buried. But nature has a way of remembering what people try to erase. In April 2025, a prescribed fire was conducted on overgrown land at Merrily Plantation, the very place where Andrew Wiley's phone had pinged the morning after Lori disappeared. Fire crews expected to clear brush and reduce wildfire risk. What they didn't expect was a shallow, hidden grave, buried near the tree line, wrapped in torn cloth and the remnants of a deteriorated canvas bag, with the skeletal remains of a young girl. Investigators arrived within hours. A perimeter was set, soil samples were taken, and the remains were transported for forensic analysis. Just days later, it was confirmed. It was Lori Paige Wiley. News broke across Florida and Georgia within hours. Photos of Lori, once faded from missing posters, returned to headlines. Her teacher, Ms. Summers, lit a candle outside the school she once walked through. Local parents wept. Some said they always feared this would be the outcome. Others said they never stopped hoping she'd be found alive. But one thing was clear. Someone had put her there, deliberately, quietly, and with no intention of ever letting her be found. The condition of Lori's remains made it difficult to determine exactly how she died, but certain signs were clear. She was not killed by wildlife or accident. She had no broken limbs consistent with a fall, and she had been carefully wrapped, as if whoever buried her wanted to conceal, not discard. Though examiners couldn't confirm the exact cause of death, they knew this. This was no runaway. This was a cover-up. For nearly 2 years, there were no suspects, no arrests, just silence. But after Lori's remains were discovered, the silence shattered, and the man who had claimed to love her most became the face of her murder case. Andrew Wiley was arrested and charged with second-degree murder and concealing a death. He was taken into custody in Georgia, where Lori's body had been found, and held without bond. For the first time, after months of suspicion and unanswered questions, police said publicly they believed Andrew Wiley killed his daughter. But what prosecutors revealed next stunned even seasoned investigators. Days after the arrest, court documents were filed in Georgia outlining the prosecution's early case. Inside were 3 bombshell allegations. 1. Andrew Wiley was the last person to see Lori alive. Surveillance showed no one else entering or leaving the home. 2. Phone data placed him near Merrily Plantation at 4:36 a.m. on the morning. She was reported missing. 3. Forensic analysis of Lori's remains revealed signs of sexual trauma. And one more thing, something that broke the hearts of everyone following the case. The medical examiner noted that, despite the condition of the remains, Lori may have been in the early stages of pregnancy at the time of her death. While the exam couldn't confirm paternity, the state alleged that the evidence pointed to Andrew Wiley as the likely abuser. It was a revelation that changed the tone of the case from tragic to unthinkable. People no longer whispered about Andrew's odd behavior. Now they asked how long this had been happening, who knew, and why no one stopped it. In custody, Andrew Wiley said nothing. He did not enter a plea. He requested a public defender. He waived his right to speak in court. The man who once told police Lori ran away now sat behind bars, accused of hiding her in the woods and burying the truth beneath ash and silence. But the legal system wouldn't have the final word, because before a trial could begin, the case took one last, unexpected turn. The justice system was preparing for trial. Witnesses were being called. Evidence was being prepared. And then everything stopped. On May 5th, 2025, just 17 days after his arrest, Andrew Wiley was found dead in his Georgia jail cell. At 6:13 a.m., a routine head count turned into a medical emergency. CPR was attempted, but Andrew was pronounced dead on sight. The official cause, later confirmed by the coroner, a pulmonary embolism, a blood clot in the lungs. Natural, unexpected, and, to many, painfully incomplete. There was no letter, no written confession, no last statement explaining what happened to Lori or why. And with Andrew Wiley's death, the criminal case against him closed. There would be no trial, no cross-examinations, no verdict, just a quiet end to a case built on screams that were never heard. For Lori's teacher, Ms. Summers, the woman who fought hardest to keep her memory alive, Andrew's death was not justice. It was a second silence, a second disappearance. He took everything, she told a local reporter, and he left us nothing, not even the truth. For prosecutors, the case had only just begun. They believed Lori had been abused, possibly impregnated, and murdered by the person who was supposed to protect her. But without Andrew's voice, the story could never be fully told. And without a trial, Lori's name would never be spoken in a courtroom. Only in whispers, vigils, and headlines that faded too fast. If Lori's story moved you, please subscribe. Because stories like hers deserve to be remembered, not buried in silence.